just had an opportunity to meet with the Gillis family, the extended family, plus the young adults, most of whom were here with their family members. And, you know, one of the things I said to them was, thank you for their great respect for the institution, because if you've been following this throughout, you realize that for a 3-week period, they were ever present, but were always very respectful that it was a court of law. And today they finally were able to show some of their frustration and appreciation for the court, and you know, but they still did it in a respectful way. And I think that's difficult, and yet they managed it, and I think is very appreciative. And so, you know, what we had a chance to speak with them about was, you know, our hope for them that this allows this chapter to close. You know, the criminal justice system is difficult if you're not accustomed to it, and it's stressful. And now they can focus internally and support and move on to the next phase of healing. And you know, it's going to be a long road, but you know, they've showed great resolve, and we're confident that they'll manage as well. And they're very appreciative of your all's understanding of their very public desire to be private. Because it's very difficult when you're thrown into these situations.
You mentioned the presence over the course of 2.5 weeks, basically 3 weeks. This trial involving a lot of witnesses who were younger, right, in their teens, in their 20s, kids who witnessed this traumatizing moment. Can you just speak to their actions on the stand throughout this trial, their resiliency in being able to go up, face this man, and, you know, talk about what happened? Can't be an easy thing to do.
No, and I guess I'll go backwards, right? So I had a chance to tell her it was empowering to her. You know, she has been her evil, and I hope she grows from that. And I really think when you consider what his selfish acts put these kids through, the juxtaposition between him and them on the witness stand is spectacular. And shared a very personal experience of horror, and yet did so with grace and through very difficult circumstance, right? They had to sit on a stand with a bunch of people watching and suffer the emotions of the fear that they had and the loss of a friend. And they did that and held up against cross-examination, where you had a defense say, we're not going to blame the kids, and then proceeded to blame the kids. He has a job to do, but they withstood that and told the truth. Conversely, you know, Kevin had a fiction he told his attorneys, as you can see in their opening, and then he had a fiction that he maintained on the stand that was quite different. And that's the problem with fiction, right? Is it's hard to make a mesh if you're just making up a story, as opposed to the kids lived it, shared it, accepted that there were going to be differences, and really handled themselves admirably.
What do you think of the judge's remarks to Mr. Monahan that while murder, in his view, is a low recidivism crime, he felt he could do this crime again if he was let out?
Well, I think, you know, Judge Michelini, in the most regal of fashions, showed what the vast majority of people who've paid attention to this view this as. It was the act of an angry, selfish male who had no regard for the life of other people. And when throughout the trial, why would you expect him to not feel as though he has done nothing wrong? And if he has that view, then I would certainly submit that the judge was spot on, that he is a grave risk to society if he's ever released back into society, that he would do it yet again.
Tony, there appears to be some intent for an appeal, obviously, at some point. Is that something that your office starts looking at now, or kind of just taking this today and taking it as victory?
Well, you know, I think I said yesterday in an interview, about 1:30 in the morning on April 16th, when I got the call, once you know it's a likely homicide, you know that there's going to be an appeal. And so really, in much of the way we approach all of your work is geared toward making sure that what we do is we pursue justice without fear or favor. That means you don't cut corners, you don't hide things, you share everything that you have. You don't rely on emotion. You present the facts to the jury in an orderly fashion and allow them to make the decision. And when you do that, you're comfortable that you'll be able to uphold our portion of the appeal. And for those that watched, Judge McElhaney did a fabulous job maintaining a clean record. So we would expect an appeal. It's happens in most criminal cases. So certainly someone who's facing life in prison would file an appeal. So we've been preparing for it all along. It doesn't come as a surprise, and we're confident that the record will support an upholding of the conviction and the consecutive form of the sentence.
Just checking my memory. Alex Whiting was actually in Blake Walsh's car in the back seat, correct?
She was sitting immediately behind Kalen, correct. And she was also, so the two individuals in the back seat were hit with shrapnel from the car. Because if you think about a car, it has the metal exterior shell, and then it has a plastic casing. And that, they all felt like something hit them. And then as you look through the investigation of the interior of the car, they really did. And so, to have those young and experience that, to sit up there on the stand and with you all there, it's welcoming, but it's intimidating, and yet really persevered. And so that was
gone right by Alex, is that right?
No, she was on the other side of the car. She was on the passenger rear.
Well,
So it entered the driver's rear.
Okay, so she was behind Blake.
She was behind Kate. She was behind Kalen. I'm sorry, I may have misspoke. Alex was sitting in the order in the car. Blake was driving. Kalen was in the front passenger seat, and Alex was in the rear passenger side seat.
But the
Bullet.
shot hit the.
It came through the C-pillar, which is on the driver's side rear, and passed through the back seat area that was empty.
This was a case that captured national attention. Whole nation watching what happened here in Washington County. As the judge mentioned, as Assistant District Attorney Briss mentioned, the meaning of making sure that people know it's not okay to shoot someone who is coming up your driveway. As the nation watches this result now, he has with this case, and what is the significance of that moment and making sure that people know those actions can't be repeated here in New York?
I would like to believe that the majority of people don't believe this is okay. And I think you have a handful that do. And for some of them, this may correct their behavior or remind them that it's not. And, so that I certainly share in their hope. I don't believe it's a widespread belief, but for those that do, I think as important is trust in the system. You watch an entire scene unfold where starting with a young 911 dispatch officer, Ms. Carpenter, who had to handle both the kids and then immediately deal with Monahan. But her calm demeanor helped maintain a calm situation, responding law enforcement to a situation where the strategic advantage was held by whomever. They didn't know what the nature of the incident was other than shots fired, and they had a young woman who'd been killed. They all approached it with just a calm approach, and it resulted in allowing the system to work and have him go to prison for the rest of his life. That's as an important a takeaway as well, is that our system can still work. As an aside, sort of similarly related, that the supervisors, especially for Salem and Hebron, when this first happened, this is what people think of Washington County. And I think the reality is, no, they're not going to allow the act of an angry couple who took such a horrific act toward young people. That's not what defines Washington County. I think what defined Washington County is the response that night and the response throughout. We have today, I touched on it earlier with how respectful everyone was of the process and the system. And, what that leads to is a trial that goes to conclusion. I mean, for those that were here, you watched, the jury came in every day dressed appropriately. They showed respect. So you get a system that works. And I think the effort of the Washington County Dispatch, law enforcement, the people in my office. I think that just shows really what this shows Washington County is, not the acts of the Monahans. Anything else?
You say the acts of the Monahans, so you believe that it's shared blame, that Monahan, Kevin pulled the trigger, but it's shared with both of them.
Yes, I mean, criminally, it's Kevin. But, today there was a great discussion of justice and responsibility. And, she was an active participant in the cover-up. You heard her lie on the 911 calls. You heard her lie on the body camera. She had an opportunity. Now, some would say, well, but then she had 9 months to choose. And when she took the stand, she chose. And that was her choice, but that does not exonerate her of moral responsibility for much of what happened that evening. And I think Christian also touched on it, and the judge did as well. This was not a reactive action. There was a preconceived notion when you look at how where the gun was and where her pistol was, right? All of that speaks to that this was not an accident. And the jury got it right, obviously, and quickly. But I think that there's certainly responsibility extends to both. Okay. Well, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.